Yo, what's good? This is Satoshi's mom. Welcome to the In It 5 the Art podcast. I'm here with the absolute legend, Crypto Bushi. This guy is a shadowy supercoder trying to break the blockchain. So I'm stoked to basically learn more about how you're thinking about the current market, Bushi, and really what you're working on. I know you've got an epic project that you're lining up. You were telling me about it, and I had to reread what you told me like a couple times because honestly, the way that you think about building in the market, the way you think about art, the way you think about like how to really just like do things differently is so fascinating, man. So I'm stoked to dig in with you, man. Thanks for coming on the pod.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Love the filter too. It's looking great. You're looking very, very cute. So so man, let's talk a little bit about like I want to start off kind of talking about your story, like how you got into NFTs. And I know we started both like at the same time a while back. So you want to like dig in a bit on like how you got started, what brought you into the space, why you got into the space, and kind of how you got to this point today.
Yeah, I don't think it's all that interesting, but I got involved back when NFTs were kind of at their hype. Um and so that was cool. I think that was like in 2021 or something like that. So like 2021, 2022-ish around there. Um and I was just interested honestly in just all the cool artwork that I was seeing being made and being sold, and there were a lot of people. Like I wasn't really like on Twitter at all before any of that, and so like that was my first real exposure to Twitter also, which was, I don't know, I guess it's sort of embarrassing to say, but I've never really been a big social media person. But I saw that like there was this cool kind of little niche of people that were all interested in the same thing on Twitter, and they were all talking about it and how cool it is and all the cool stuff it can do. And so I got caught up in all that stuff and got caught up in kind of all the crap that probably like everyone else got caught up into. Um, but I was just super interested, and I was specifically interested in like all the 3D artwork that was being made. I thought it was just so cool, and like I thought it was just so amazing that like people in their bedroom on like a laptop could create like these, I don't know, just like these like beautiful worlds that looked like they were made in some like studio somewhere that had like a big budget. And so I was like super interested in that. And I was like, oh, well, how can I make stuff like that? And so I started like learning like Blender and all this different like 3D creation tools just to see if I could like create anything that looked realistic. And was just interested in learning, to be honest. I wasn't really like trying to sell stuff in the very beginning as an artist. I was more just curious on how other people made certain things, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I can figure out how to like make that too, just to kind of like impress myself more than anything.
So like you got into Blender and it basically got you into the world of NFTs and like how like you realize that you can create stuff, create worlds inside of Blender.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause I mean, I grew up playing video games just like probably everybody else in my generation. Um, but I never really like asked myself, oh, like how did they actually like make these things? I was more interested obviously in just like playing them and being like a competitive player, just being good at the game. But as I got older, obviously you start to ask yourself these questions like, how are these things actually made? And come to find out, like, it's not that hard to make some of these things in 3D, and it's not that hard. There's all sorts of like indie game developers and stuff like that. It's kind of like if you just know how to use the tools that you're given, you can do a lot of stuff. And so I always thought that was interesting, and so I just kind of pushed myself to see like how far I could go with 3D, how much I could learn. And it was really just from like a curiosity standpoint more than anything. I never really had like a direction of like, oh, I want to like learn this so that I can do X. It was always just like, cool, I'm gonna sit down today and make something random and see if it looks cool when I'm done. And that was it. And so I've always kind of had that mentality, like even moving forward now. And so like I would say I'm fairly good-ish at Blender and like 3D stuff. Um, but I don't focus on it anymore. Like I just use it as a tool in my tool belt. So like when I'm creating something, maybe there's times where I'm like, oh, that would be easier for me just to create that asset in Blender or whatever, and then I'll bring that into like whatever I'm working on now. So I think as an artist, like you should always be trying to learn new tools and trying to like establish where that goes into your workflow. Same with like AI, right? Like a lot of people like smash on AI all the time. It's like, well, it's just another tool. It's not like an end all be all. It's just another thing that you can use towards like to further just some end creation. And so that's how I try to look at everything that I learn. Like I'm not really trying to like master anything per se. I'm just trying to learn it good enough to where I can like smash it together with something else and maybe make something cool at the end.
So like in the past, you were really using Blender to create characters and worlds and basically just leveraging it as a tool. But now like you're more so looking at it as like a conceptual thing, more of like performance art as far as like from what I've seen, right?
Yeah, I've definitely like when I first started making art consciously, um, I obviously started doing more research on like different artists and what it means to be an artist, etc. And like a lot of people said that it takes an artist like years for them to find their like unique style or their signature or whatever. Like, and you know this, like if you see like certain artists and you see their work and you don't even know it's from that artist, some artists have such like a unique signature or a unique style that like you tell right away. You're like, oh, that's XYZ or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And so like I've never had that, right? Like obviously as I was like learning new stuff, I was just constantly like jumping from one kind of style to the next, copying a lot of people's styles that I thought was cool. Um, but I never really had like my unique style. And so like I was always searching for like what that is, right? Like, and so as time has progressed, I've started to kind of digress back into like what I was interested in when I was a kid. Like I've always been interested in like security. I've always been interested in like vulnerabilities, like penetration testing. Even to a physical level, like penetration testing, like physical locks, or like that area over there says that you're not allowed to go in there. Well, like what are the ways that you can sneak in, right? Um, and so I've started to incorporate that now into my artwork. And yeah, a lot of that often is conceptual because a lot of it blurs the lines of like legality and ethics. And so you have to be careful on like what you do because if it's too real, then you could be breaking some laws. And so I have to play more on the conceptual line in order to protect myself from, I don't know, being arrested one day. Which limits you sometimes, which sucks, but
But the fact you're willing to even play that game is like putting you in a different league. Like I'm not trying to like push the legal side of things. Like like there's different ways that people attack, I think, the game in a way, like their own flavor of it. So like for you, I think what you're doing is really interesting. And like obviously people also think that it's very interesting. Like you recently had a really successful piece of among other pieces, but specifically Snow Crash. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit like about that because that was just pretty wild. At first, when I saw you doing that, I was like, wow, like what is he doing? Is this going to catch fire? And then I saw people posting about it. I saw Coldy post about it. I saw other big accounts that were being affected by what you created posting and talking about, hey, is this safe? Hey, like what's going on with my Opensea? So do you want to dig into that a little bit and talk about like the parallels between what you were aiming to accomplish there and like where you're at right now?
yeah. So I've thought a lot about it recently, and I keep asking myself, like, why am I continuously drawn to like offensively malicious things or artworks? And I don't know the answer to it. I mean, maybe it's because it's just generally interesting, and it's just like a fun challenge. Like I would say like I'm a problem solver, so I like to like figure out how to break things and how to help maybe fix things, or at least I don't know, maybe it's because I also like to break the rules. Like maybe when I was a little kid, like teachers would say like, oh, you can't do that, and then I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna do it anyways. Like what are you gonna do about it? Which probably isn't the best quality, but it's kind of like I guess bled into into my adult life. Or maybe the other option, maybe the other reason is because like, you know, it's so noisy in Web3. It's just noisy in the world in general, right? Like in order to, I guess, become notable in this world, you have to like ruffle some feathers. And so maybe it's like my like subconscious yearning for wanting to be relevant. I don't know, but those are all potential reasons why.
Interesting.
Yeah, but when it comes to Snow Crash, I was most interested, like ever since I was introduced to NFTs, I was always interested in like the thought of like a virus NFT, like in the literal sense of like, you know, this NFT that you get in your wallet and now you have like a virus on your computer. And so, because like everybody always says like NFTs are permissionless, decentralized, composable, interoperable, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's like it's almost like mail, right? Like mail that you receive at your house. Like you can't stop somebody from sending you a package. So like if they want to send you something malicious in the mail, like you can't really stop that from happening. It's just going to show up to your house. And so that's similar to NFTs, right? Now the difference is in physical person with mail is like obviously you can look at the outside of the package, you can look at the sender, the return address, etc., and you can make a judgment call on your own if you want to like open that package and introduce yourself to maybe whatever might be like laying in there waiting for you. But with NFTs, it's different, right? Like somebody can just send something to your wallet and there is no like permission for you to like deny it or not accept it. Like it just shows up, like it or not. And so I always thought, okay, well, like what like bad things can be done with that? And I think the overarching answer is like not a lot. I don't really think there are a lot of like bad things that could happen. And so it kind of just became this thought for a long time to where I never really acted on it. I of course saw like all the phishing NFTs and stuff like that back in the day, like you know all the Twitter people yelling like, oh, you know, don't interact with that NFT, it'll drain your wallet or whatever. Um, but those weren't like super interesting to me because again they it was kind of like physical mail, like it involved you like interacting with it. So like it wasn't like, you know, I guess to put it bluntly, like if you're stupid enough to interact with this NFT, like that's when the attack happens. um and that's really true. I mean honestly, like attackers prey on unsuspecting people, and I'm not saying they're stupid, like, but they have a stupid moment, right, where like they're doing something that like they just clearly know they shouldn't do. Or it's a super sophisticated attack and like it's just kind of hard to put blame on the victim, and I don't want to victim shame here, but at the end of the day, your best way to protect yourself is by just protecting yourself, honestly. um and so where was I going with that? So I was saying that, yeah, it basically those types of like malicious NFTs, they involve some sort of like user input or, you know, some sort of user interaction. And so I really wanted to create something that didn't involve any interaction at all. Like it just shows up and it starts doing what it's supposed to do. And so that's really where Snow Crash spawned from. I stumbled into this idea of like crashing SVG render engine, because there's like a vulnerability with the SVG render engine where you can basically tell it to continue to render something that it will never be able to render, and then it crashes. And realistically, like this should be patched. I mean, browsers should not try to render something like 89 bajillion times. Like browsers nowadays should be smart enough to realize like, hey, okay, like this is stupid. We probably shouldn't do this. But for some reason they don't, and they all will try to do it, even like your cell phone, which is ridiculous. And so that's really where Snow Crash came from. Snow Crash was like, okay, we're going to abuse the SVG render engine and we're going to make the SVG render engine crash. And basically Snow Crash just does that super aggressively and it does it really fast. And so what's cool about it is this NFT lands into your wallet. It's a legitimate SVG, which an SVG is basically just an image. It could be other things too, but we'll just say in this context, it's an image. And so it satisfies what an NFT typically is, right? Like NFTs are just JPEGs. So it's an image. And then all of the like marketplaces and stuff like that, like Opensea and in places like Blur and Magic Eden now and stuff like that, they all think it's a legitimate image file for an NFT, and so they try to render the image. Well, when they try to render the image on your browser, obviously the NFT is created to crash your browser, so it does just that. It crashes your browser. Um, and so it's cool because how do we see like all of these marketplaces display your NFTs? They'd usually display them all together. And so like when you pull up your profile page or your wallet page, whatever, you can see all your NFTs and their little thumbnail formats. And so as long as Snow Crash is in that little thumbnail format, or amongst all your other NFTs, it crashes your browser. And so not only can you not see Snow Crash, which there really isn't anything to see anyways because it crashes you, but also it'll crash all of your other NFTs as well. It crashes your whole user experience essentially. So it makes all these websites like not usable by you. And so like, you might have this NFT collection that's worth $100 million. And as long as Snow Crash is in your wallet and the browser is serving it to you amongst those others, you can't look at any of your NFTs. And so that's always been the funny thing, is that like, NFTs can be owned by one person but viewable by everybody. Well, now it's like no one can view it. And so like all your NFTs are unviewable. And so to showcase that feature of Snow Crash, I sent it to all of the kind of top wallets that, or at least what I would consider top, like notable wallets in the NFT world. And so like Coldy and Nate Alex were amongst them, along with like the Saw the Bees wallets, along with like 113 from Math Castles, people like Beeple. There's a big list. I think I sent it to like 20-ish people. And a lot of these people own very valuable NFTs. I mean, some of these NFTs would be considered like grails, right, of our space. And so I don't know what the exact dollar value is of all the NFTs, but let's just like say maybe it was like $100 million worth of NFTs. Snow Crash was in their wallets and nobody could view them. So essentially Snow Crash was stopping people from looking at these $100 million worth of NFTs that people in this community would probably consider as being like some of the most notable artwork that's been created to date. And I'll use that loosely, right? Like that's obviously up for interpretation, but it was interesting. It was like this giant troll, right, on NFTs. Like it's like not only do these not exist in the physical world, but they also like sort of don't exist now in the digital world because somebody is crashing them and nobody can view them. So it's like, what's the appeal of NFTs now? It's like we've just removed it from your view. And so it was cool. And
How
then
did you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but how did you make it to where it showed in their wallet? Like, did it not just go to their hidden folder?
Yeah,
Or
so
did it
that's
still crash even
that's
in
the
the
other
hidden folder?
that's the other fun part too. So me being again a problem solver, somebody who's not gonna like just give up, I'm like, okay, there's always a way. It's very hard in the security world. It's known that it's very hard to stop a persistent attacker. And that would mean somebody that is persistently trying to break into something. So it doesn't matter. Like if you're in the real world and let's say your front door is made out of steel, it's steel reinforced, it's got poured concrete all around it, supporting it. And you say, oh, this door is impenetrable. Well, with enough time and persistence, somebody can break through your door. It's just all security is, in the end of the day, is just a way to slow people down and discourage people from trying in the first place. Like nothing's impenetrable. Everything can be broken into with enough time and persistence and enough know-how, right? And the proper tools. But and so that's my mindset always, is like there's always a way. You just have to figure it out. And the question is, are you willing to figure it out? And so with Opensea, yes, I knew that for instance, if I just like cold sent this NFT to like Punk6529, it's not going to land in his main collection, right? Opensea is a spam filter now, that throws it into the hidden collection. And so I started experimenting with, okay. And by the way, I did confirm that. So I did Beeple was the first test transaction. I sent Snow Crash to Beeple, and it went straight to his hidden folder. And I was like, okay, shit. And so I was like, okay, let me try something else. And so what I did was, is OpenSea has this feature to where you can purchase with another wallet. And so basically what happens is when you buy an NFT on OpenSea, it prompts you to send to another wallet. And basically that's their way of like creating it to where, okay, you can purchase stuff with your hot wallet and then you can send it to your cold wallet. So I was like, huh, let's see what happens if I do that. And so I put the Snow Crash NFTs up for sale, and then I went and bought it myself. And when it asked me to send to another wallet, I said, yes, let's send it to Beeple. And so it sent it to I purchased it, and then so I'm the one that minted it, and then it sent it to Beeple's wallet. And lo and behold, OpenSea had thought that, okay, cryptobushi.eth must be Beeple's hot wallet. And so then it showed in his main collection. And so then I just rinsed and repeated with like the list of 20 other wallets that I was interested in sending Snow Crash to. And lo and behold, it showed up in each and every one of them. And so that was funny too, because Nate Alex made a comment. He was like, before he knew what Snow Crash was, or who I was, he was like, what is this shit doing in my wallet, and how does it end up in my main collection when I literally go and purchase like $20,000 NFTs, and they even go to my hidden folder. And so it's just funny how, yeah, the spam filter for OpenSea at that time just was clearly not working as intended. I'm not sure if they ever fixed it, but
Yeah.
hopefully they saw this as a nice use case.
I think they're just playing GameCube all day and eating pizza, as far as I know. So I'm not sure they might have fixed it.
I would be doing that too, dude, honestly, so I don't blame them.
So I want to ask, like, what inspired you to create this? Like, where was your head at? And was it just based off of the fascination with breaking shit and wanting to do some performance art?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I don't know the main reason why. Obviously, it's fun to make art. It's fun to test and break stuff. It's fun to like try new concepts. It's fun to make money. It's fun to get people to, be interested in what you're doing. There's a lot of facets that go into it. But I would like to think like a more noble way of saying it, I guess, would be like, if we truly are building like the future of the internet, right? And I think like Web3, and the term Web3 is so stupid, so cringe. Like, we're just building, we're building on top of the internet. I mean, that's all we're doing. And so if we're building like a better internet, or an internet 2.0, that's even more cringe. But if we're building on top of the internet and we're just making it better, then like everything that we're building all the time, we need to continuously like try to break and stress test and see like where we can fuck it up. I mean, it's like, we can't just like always trust that everything is like put together great, or that the developers like thought of every single possible problem. And so like, in the same, especially now, like we're talking about like bringing financialization onto the internet in like a meaningful way, and also into a self-sovereign way. Like, self-sovereignty is in itself like very dangerous, because like when you fuck up, like there's nobody there to help you. I mean, there's going to be a bunch of bots that come in and try to help you, and they want to they want to steal more of your money. But like when you mess up in Web3, like you can lose a lot of money and you'll like never get it back. And so I think like we need more people to just try and break stuff, and always be questioning and always be critical. And like, if, again, like we should never trust anything. And so that's kind of like what I'm doing, is playing around with stuff. I mean, it's funny too, because like in Web3, we've started to like go backwards in terms of security. Like the security world has understood for a long time that like certain things are inherently like risky to do. And in Web3, we're like going backwards, and we're giving people these abilities to like do things that in the traditional web world, like we take away because it's dangerous. And so I think that's fine. Like it's cool to have like open, decentralized, like permissionless collaboration and everything, but like there still needs to be that thought of like, okay, like we're opening up this Pandora's box. Where can it go wrong? Like, what happens if somebody like Bushi, who is interested in like figuring these things out, like, but Bushi's not like motivated by like doing things in a black hat way where he's like trying to exploit it for his own personal gain. He's more, well, I guess you could say I am for my artistic gain, but I'm not trying to like screw people over for my own financial gain. But there's a lot of people out there who will. And so, how do we find those things before they do? And those are questions that I think need to be asked. Like we ship stuff so fast in Web3 now that I don't think people take a step back and like think, okay, like, is this a smart idea? Like, or they don't, I don't know, maybe they're not paying for like people like me to like just go and try to break stuff, which they should, and they should hire me to do it.
What do you think about the fine line between ethical exploitation and the legalities of the exploitations when you're doing this kind of stuff? Like, do you think about that, or do you more so like shoot and then figure it out afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to think about that, because obviously I don't want to get like in actual trouble. That would suck. Um, but I've always kind of been, I don't know, I go back and forth with this too, because like I always find examples where it just like it's just a stupid comment, but I'll say it anyways. I almost feel like in our world, like if something can be done, it probably should be done. Um, but I can also see where that can like go awry. There's a lot of situations where like that statement could be like, well, if if this can be done, like, and you said it should be done, like, should it be done? Like, because it's horrible. And yeah, I don't think it applies to everything, but I think it applies into technology. And so like people are always like saying like, oh, AI is going to kill us all and we shouldn't be like developing it any further, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think, well, if it's possible to create AI that kills us all, then I mean we probably should like explore down that path, and maybe we can deviate from it. But like I think just saying like, oh, because this horrible outcome could happen, like we're just going to stop doing it. Like, no, I think if it's possible, like we need to do it. And so I think the same applies for like exploitation online. Like if there is a way to exploit something, then somebody needs to do it. And then we need to hopefully they're a good guy and we can figure out what the fuck went wrong and fix it. And not just continue down this path, because there are lots of people out there who they will use these things against you. And so like I think Did put it right. Like me and Did we found an exploit on the MEE6 Discord bot, which they say they're on millions of servers. We found a pretty nasty exploit. It's just a social attack. You wouldn't think it's all that nasty, but I mean, social attacks account for like probably most of the attacks that happen in Web3. And so it's a pretty good one in my opinion. If I was a bad actor, I would definitely be using it, and I don't think anyone's using it right now. So it's like,
How does it work?
so basically, MEE6, which I'm sure like everyone's aware of, is a
Yeah.
Discord bot that it's basically like a community management bot on Discord, and it does all sorts of things. It like basically takes on super admin role for you, and then it's a bot, and so it can like automatically do like admin tasks for you. So like for instance, it can watch for like spam. It can kick people and ban people, and it can be used as a tool to basically send messages to your community. And so for instance, like, maybe you're launching a new product and you're expecting a big influx of Discord people coming into your Discord. And so they're all going to be asking the same question, right? Like, oh, where do I sign up, etc. And so instead what you can do is you can tell your users, you can say, hey, like instead of just asking the same question over and over again and us having to pay a staff member to do that, and flooding the chat, what you can do is you can just send a command in chat, and then MEE6 will like send back a pre-written thing that says, oh, if you want to sign up, like go to this website, etc., and do this. And that's great, right? But the problem is MEE6 jumped on the AI bandwagon not long ago, and they integrated AI into their product. And so basically,
Right.
the way that they have it now is that MEE6 basically will send you these like schizo AI responses back when you like chat with it. And I guess their main function for it was that they wanted it to be like this, like you could create these AI personas. So for instance, like if you wanted Elon Musk to be in your server, then you could have this AI Elon Musk in your Discord that people could chat to, and they could use it for like role playing and stuff like that. Now, I'm sure there's like some like legitimate use cases of servers using it for like lore and role play and stuff like that. Um, but like the bulk of like human populated Discord servers don't really have a use for this AI chatbot, because it doesn't do anything other than just like send you stupid replies back. Like it's not like it's like
Yeah.
this super smart AI where it does anything special. It really doesn't. It's just a chatbot essentially. But AI AI has introduced a whole new level of let's say like exploitation or potential for
Yeah.
exploitation.
Vectors.
Yeah, attack vectors, because AI is fairly stupid. I mean, it really is. It's like a small child to where like if you continually just try to beat it down and say like, no, you're gonna do this, and it might rebel and say, no, I can't do that. If you continue to just try to negotiate with the chatbot, you can eventually get the chatbot to kind of break its own rules. And so the specific attack that me and Did found is basically it's a parrot. And so a parrot in real life, it like repeats back what you say. Like you say want a cracker, it's like want a cracker. And so essentially what we did is we created a prompt that the MEE6 AI will then parrot back exactly what you tell it to say. And so the problem here is that on a lot of Discord servers, we've groomed people into thinking, trusting the MEE6 bot. And a lot of these servers will actually rename their MEE6 bot to be on brand with whatever their product is. So for instance, let's say the Discord server, the company is called like Fun NFTs, right? So they'll rename the bot to Fun NFTs bot or something like that. And so maybe they've been serving stuff through the bot for a long time, and users generally trust it. They're like, okay, like I know if I'm going to click any links in this Discord, if it comes from the Fun NFTs bot, then it's from the Fun NFTs team, and so I can trust it. So the problem is that when you have somebody like me who comes in or did, and we created an injection prompt, we can now get that bot to say whatever we want it to say. And so for instance, I can sit there and wait, like let's say we're on launch day of Fun NFTs and people are flooding into the Fun NFTs server and they're trying to figure out where to buy some Fun NFTs. We can wait until people start asking questions. And then what we can do is we can inject into the Fun NFTs MEE6 AI bot and get it to say what we want to say. So for instance, maybe part of the sign up flow for this new website is people have to go and fill out this form or whatever. We can then create our own form. We can replace the link, obviously. Whenever somebody types in that command in chat, we then do the injection, and then the bot sends what we told it to send. And then the user thinks, oh, this is from the Fun NFTs bot because it comes from the bot itself. I can trust it. And so they click it and maybe they do the form. And at the end of the form, it says, hey, congratulations, you have access to Fun NFTs. Download this to start now. And then they download it and it's a fucking wallet drainer. And then boom, everything's gone or whatever.
But like, what about if it's not your bot? You could still inject it on any person's bot?
Yeah, anybody's.
Oh shit. And have you like brought this to them? Like maybe you can get a bounty for it, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I did today on Cyber. On Cyber released their new V2, which by the way looks fucking sick.
Yeah, it really does. I'm stoked to dig into that.
Yep, I went into their Discord server, noticed that they were serving their sign up information on the MEE6 bot. I injected it. The bot said I'm the best, and then I reached out to the CEO and said, "Yo, this is a problem, dude." And so their team's looking into it. But yeah, it's a
I'm glad
problem.
they answered you.
Yeah, they've actually, dude, they've got some of the best customer support I've ever seen in Web3. They're awesome. I mean, I left a reply on one of their tweets. They replied instantly. They DM'd me after that, and then the CEO uh, was left some
Ryan?
comments on my tweet. Yeah, left some comments on my tweet, and then he followed me, and then I DM'd him. So they're super cool.
Yeah, they've got a great team, and their product is so sick. They've had an amazing impact on the space. So cheers to them. I'm
Yeah,
stoked for them.
which is why I would hate like if somebody exploited them, for instance, right? Like they've got such a cool product. They're doing super cool things. They're getting a lot of hype right now because they just launched V2. And then I go into their Discord server and I see that, hey, they're vulnerable to exactly what, me and Did found the other day. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's just unfortunate. And luckily, no one is using it yet. Um, I don't believe anyone's using this as an attack vector, but I think it's a pretty good one. And then the caveat on top of that too, by the way, is that I can actually delete the message that has the injection prompt in it. So MEE6 will reply to my message, and then once I can then delete my original message, and now there's no trace of me ever doing the injection in the first place. And so it just
Wild.
looks like a message from MEE6. Yeah.
So, like, getting back to the question on like where is that fine line between the legality and the ethics of exploitation? I think like what you've done with Snow Crash, for example, you're not hurting anyone. Like, yeah, they can't see their NFTs that they spent a ton of money on. Maybe they have a small anxiety attack. But once they also learn about like what you've done, a lot of people appreciate it. Like you've had was it Flamingo DAO that collected your Snow Crash piece or
No, fingerprints.
fingerprints, right? So like spending thousands of dollars on multiple editions of this piece, like, people obviously appreciate what you've done and think it's sick. And I think personally, the line there, you're not hurting anyone. Like, you're not stealing from anyone. That's the performance art, is that you know where to draw that line, but to do it in a way that's like still pushing people and pushing their boundaries and making people uncomfortable and getting people to talk about it, but not actually at the end of the day being like, hey, I drained your board ape and I just animated it. LOL. Here's it back. You know what I mean? Like I'm animating board apes. And, then it's kind of malicious. I think, though, like, for example, Shlomes, I'd love to talk about like what you think about Shlomes and how they've operated with the Gmail stunt, for example. Like nobody got hurt from that, but then Gmail, Google actually had to like send out press saying, "Hey, we're not sunsetting Gmail." And at the end of the day, it just got everyone talking. And they did the Cybertruck stunt where it was like these Cybertrucks keep crashing. That's kind of pushing it even more. Maybe that if at scale could even affect stock price. That's crazy stuff. But I think like, I'm curious on your take on what you think drawing the line is in that sense. Like, do you agree that like as long as you're not being malicious, there's a good place to do it? And like, what do you think about Shlomes and his stunts that he's done? Has that inspired you at all?
Yeah. I think it's a hard question to answer because like my initial reaction would be like, okay, the fine line for me would be like it can't hurt anybody, right? But then you look at something like what Shlomes is doing, and I like fully support what Shlomes is doing. Like let's say like in your example, let's say that like with the Tesla Cybertrucks, he's like psyoping the whole fucking world with all these crashed AI Cybertrucks. And yeah, let's say that people actually believe it and the stock starts dumping, right? Well, let's say there's like a family out there who, they're just like middle class, lower middle class, whatever, and they put some money into Tesla stock, like maybe some of their retirement. Maybe the stock price starts dipping because some antics that Shlom's pulling. Maybe they panic because they're just uneducated investors, right? And they don't know what the fuck's going on. They just see the stock price going down. Well, maybe they like try to exit right away and they end up taking a loss on money that they already like kind of shouldn't have been investing in the first place. And now they've been hurt, right? Now they have real life anxiety, like, fuck, I needed that money. Like, how am I gonna do XYZ now? Like whatever. And and you could always pass the blame back on them and say, you know, they shouldn't have been investing in the first place, yada yada. But I think we've all been there though, right? We've all had these feelings of like, fuck, like I just got fucked on that, and that hurts. Like now, you know, I needed that money. I don't know why I was doing that in the first place, and that sucks. That's a shitty feeling.
Yeah.
And then that can go even deeper. I mean, some people go a lot darker with those feelings too, right? Maybe they do worse things. And so that would hurt someone, right? And so like back to what I was saying earlier, like, you know, where's the fine line? Like, you know, if it hurts somebody, I mean, there's always a potential to hurt somebody when you're doing any sort of performance art, especially in the world now. But again, like I don't know, in that situation, like I think what Shlomes is doing is 100% fair though, because like if we really live in a society where some anonymous artist, right, who, I mean, he has a big following, but he doesn't have like that a super large following either, right? Like it's not like he has millions of followers. Like he's a fairly small following in the grand scheme of things. If you're telling me that a guy like him or a girl, I'm not sure, can get a company like Google or Tesla to react to their misinformation, then we have a problem with the way that humans are digesting the information and how they're trusting it. And so, you know, there needs to be a real question around like, you know, what is breaking here and how can we fix it? And I think that's becoming more and more of a problem with AI and stuff like that. Even with like the recent assassination attempt of Trump, like it was hard sometimes to discern like, is the information that I'm looking at, is it even fucking real? Is it AI? Like, is it not? Like, I don't know, right? And you know, is this really like a picture of Trump, or is this really Biden talking? Like, who the fuck knows half the time? And so I think that's a problem. And then even then, like, look at what happened with the SEC got hacked, right? Like back when I think the Bitcoin
Oh
ETF,
my God. Yeah,
which
that is nuts.
was epic, right? I mean, super epic. And it's just hilarious. Like, and so, you know, there's a real problem with social media nowadays. And social media, like it or not, is becoming the new media source. And it's honestly better. I mean, for
Yeah,
instance, like with the Trump
for
assassination
sure.
attempt, I wasn't like going on to like, you know, NBC or CNN or any of that shit. I was on Twitter. I'm like
Me
Googling,
too.
or not Googling. I'm in the search. I'm like Trump shot, something like that, right?
Yes, me too.
And
Same.
I'm looking at accounts with like 2 followers, and I'm like, okay, let's see what the fuck this person, do they have any information?
Literally.
And you know, sure enough, in the matter of like 10-15 minutes of me scrolling on Twitter, I got all the information that I would need, rather than sitting on CNN or any of those bullshit media platforms anymore, and they just run the same shit over and over and over again for fucking hours. um, and
Yeah.
so, you know, it is a new way for people to consume everything, including media, and you know, including just everything. And so, you know, going back to the point, like if Shlomes is identifying this as a problem, like if people are trusting Shlomes based on some of the antics he's pulling, then he's doing is highlighting, or he or she is highlighting this huge problem that anybody can take advantage of. And I've been thinking myself, like, fuck, how can I do something like that? You know, what can I psyop? But it's hard, and Shlomes does a very good job at it. Even with the GME stuff, like with Roy and Kitty, like Shlomes was trying his best, or her best, to psyop people, and I think a lot of people were were convinced, which is funny in retrospect.
What
But
did he do about Roy and Kitty? I don't remember that one. I wasn't, or I guess I didn't see that one.
they they tried to convince everybody that Roy and Kitty had sold their account to him, and that
Holy
and
shit.
that and that they were behind, um, you know, all of this, all of the posts and stuff like that, because Roy and Kitty doesn't post anything that makes any damn sense. So, you know, Roy and Kitty's Twitter account, I think, had been inactive for like 2 years, something like that. And then out of nowhere, the account starts posting memes like every hour on the
Right.
dot, like really like high quality memes. And so then the stock price of GME like shot up, of course, by like freaking 60%, because it's filled with a bunch of degenerates. And And everybody thought like, oh, Roaring Kitty's back, like something's happening, it's gonna squeeze or whatever. And then Shlomes jumped in and was like, no, I actually bought the account and had all these fake screenshots of like negotiating the sale of the Twitter account to Shlomes. And so had a bunch of like GME apes, investors, whatever you want to call them, like in his comments, like, you know, oh my God, did you really buy it, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people saying, no, there's no way. But the funny part is that he created the dialogue of like, he made it in question, you know, like, is it real? Is it not? And
Yeah.
it's just so funny. Like, and so yeah, I don't know. I guess back to your original question, like, where's the line? I don't know. I don't know. I think, I don't know. That's a good question.
Honestly, that is a good question, right? Because performance art is something that gets people talking. So Shlomes obviously gets people talking. We're talking about it right now, but so many people were talking about Google's Gmail sunsetting. That was like nuts. I saw that. I legitimately believed it. He worded it so good. I even told my girlfriend, like, hey, Gmail's sunsetting. That's weird. And she was like, really? Wow.
You're like, yeah,
And then we just
I
went
saw
on
it on
about our
Twitter,
life.
so it must be true. Like,
Yeah, and that's what's cool though about Twitter is like now, like since like Trump was shot at and got shot,
he was shot,
and
bro. He got shot in
he
the
was
ear.
shot. Trump was shot, and instantly the news is everywhere. Everyone knows what's going on. And back in the day, the mainstream media really had the control over what information we were going to get. Like, think about back when only a few channels on TV existed. Think about back when newspaper was how most people were getting their information. And think about like when we didn't have the capabilities that we do today to spread information. So think about that and how like a certain group of people can be like, all right, this is what we want everyone to think. And we put that information through that pathway, and that's what everyone starts to believe. Now that doesn't exist anymore. Like if they're playing by that rule, then there's no more like they're not going to be able to continue to do that because we have things like Twitter where Elon Musk, I don't know if you saw, but he said that he was offered like basically money under the table, or not, sorry, let me rephrase that. He was offered under the table a deal to not be fined in exchange for censoring people on Twitter. And he said, no, I'm not going to take that deal. And then he posted it on X and was like, yeah, not going to take that deal. And because of him, we have a platform now where we can reliably believe, at least for now, that we can get information fast from reliable sources. And even if the sources aren't reliable, community notes can basically come in. I don't know how long it would take. Maybe it'll take an hour, maybe it'll take a day for a community note to pop up in the right way. I don't know the specifics, but it gives us a better opportunity comparing that to like when there's only a few channels on TV or we would check the newspaper to see the news. So I'm curious, like, what is your take on how people digest information nowadays, and how does that play to performance art that you would consider unleashing?
Yeah. I like social attacks a lot. I think in general, like social attacks are, I think why they're so widely successful is because it's generally easier. It's easier to attack the human than it is to attack the actual, like, let's say code or the actual protocol or whatever, or let's say the physical lock or whatever the security is. It's easier to convince somebody to open their front door and let you in through their front door than it is just to kick the door down. And so I think it's interesting to try to play off the psychology of people and kind of figure those things out. Now, with that said, like I have not actually released any like artwork per se that does that. Um, Mainly because I really just don't know yet how I would want to do that. But I think Shlomes is a great example of that, and what they're doing. It's really cool. But as the world becomes more technological and we see more of this, like what you're saying, dissemination of information online, and people shifting their balance of trust to stuff they see online, I think it opens up this huge door to exploit that and figure out ways to kind of do attacks in a new light. It's kind of funny too. Like, I think attacks, and I don't know, maybe this isn't particularly true, but it just feels like it's true. Like, attacks seem like they're getting less technical and more, I don't know, more like exploiting the flow of things rather than like when people think of like hackers, they think of like people that are like shadowy super coders that are like, you know, sitting in a basement, in a dark basement with like, it's only lit up by their computer screen, and they're just fucking hacking away, and they got code up and it's green, right? And it's like they're hacking away and they know everything. But in reality, it seems like it's more of like a social thing. It's more like they are just like, it's almost like they're in disguise and they're just tricking you. And you're the one that's kind of letting them in. And like we saw this with Squarespace. Like Squarespace recently had been getting a lot of domains hijacked, and it was a big problem for crypto because a lot of crypto companies were hosting their stuff in oh yeah, the coffee shop hacker. Yeah, that's what they think. Yo, I can't hear you. You're muted.
This is what I think of when I think of people who are hacking, like traditionally
Yeah,
speaking.
yeah, and I posted that meme actually. And so it's funny because with Squarespace, Google recently sold their domain business to Squarespace, and so anybody that had a domain that was basically hosted by Google, or the DNS was, that got sold to Squarespace. And so Squarespace, they wanted to make it easy for users to be able to basically create a new account with Squarespace and then, you know, manage their DNS and their domain and everything like that. And so what Squarespace did is Squarespace basically like pre-registered all of the domains, or pre-authenticated them all to the domain name. And so all the attacker had to do was go into Squarespace, go to create a new account, just like any normal person would, and put in their email address and their password, and that was it. And the big problem here, though, is that um, Squarespace did not verify that you actually own the email address that you are signing up an account up for. And so, for instance, you could put bill@gates.com and then put your password, and it won't confirm that you own, you know, bill@gates.com. And so, you know, that you could say you're Bill Gates, and as long, if for instance Bill Gates had not registered his account yet on Squarespace, and he had a domain at Squarespace from the Google transfer, then you could create an account just like you're Bill Gates, and now you own it and you have full control over his website. And that's essentially what these guys were
Wow.
doing. And so they weren't using all these super sophisticated like hacker tools, and they weren't, you know, doing all these crazy things. They were literally just creating accounts. Like, that was it. Like, it wasn't that complicated. Now I'm sure they went into more sophisticated attacks once they had access to the domains, because they still obviously had to, like, you know, turn that into something that they could use, probably to make money, or, you know, whatever their motivation is. But to gain access, it was literally as simple as just creating accounts through the normal user create account button that anybody uses.
So like these things are popping up where people aren't really needing to be very tech savvy when it comes to coding and stuff, or looking for holes and things. More so it's just like simple type of things like making a post on X. Like, do you think there's art to people who shit post for the sake of just making people confused? Like I saw somebody post, I think it was Pop Punk posted, and not, there's two different pop punks. I think there's Pop Punk on Chain, who is a profile picture of a Wasi, and then there's Crypto Pop Punk, who is an artist. I don't think I'm confusing the two, but one of them, Pop Punk on Chain, 99% sure, he posted something like JD Vance is the top holder of, or like one of the top holders of Bored Ape Kennel Club. What do I do about this? And like then people were posting about it, like, wow, this guy, he's, you know, Republican with an Indian wife who owns NFTs and is pro crypto. And then this started spreading like crazy. And I saw a lot of accounts posting about it. And then I saw him post underneath one. He was like, this is a joke, right? I just used inspect element to post this, but it like went viral. So it's like, what do you think about the concept there of like people doing these kind of more simplistic things of posting and just shit posting for the sake of confusing people because they think it's funny? It's like spreading rumors almost. Is that art, do you think? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, and so see, this is where I was saying earlier, like, people are just being stupid. Like, so I saw the same thing, and I was like, okay, my initial gut reaction is like JD Vance he's not a top holder of like Bored Apes. Like, that's just stupid. It makes no sense. Like, I just don't see it, right? And then on top of that, like, my next reaction is like, even if JD Vance was the top holder of Bored Apes, why would his fucking ENS name be his full name? Like, it makes no sense. Like, he could be anonymous, right? Like, for somebody that is in the public eye, like, it would probably make more sense for somebody like him to want to be anonymous, because he doesn't want what he's doing online to be scrutinized by his opponents, essentially. And then my third reaction was like, okay, even if I go look on Etherscan and I go pull up the top holder list of Bored Apes and I see jdvance.eth there, that doesn't mean that that's JD Vance anyways. It could be just some troll person that changed their ENS to JD Vance.eth. Like, they bought it and then they changed their domain. And so, like, even then I would be like, yeah, he's got the dog in him. Even then I'd be like that's still not JD Vance to me. And then, like you said, like, the most simple would have been just, if you wanted to spread this rumor, the most simple would have been to just do the inspect element and change the actual HTML. But it would have been actually been more funny if somebody would have actually bought jdvance.eth, changed their ENS, and then people are like, no way, and then they go look and it's actually on Etherscan, like a third party, right? And then people are like, oh, it must be fucking real, because nobody can go and register any ENS out there and change their fucking name.
Literally 236,000 views.
But yeah, I think it, like, to go back to your original question, like, yeah, I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. And if people are too stupid to believe it, then I guess, like, that's on the people. And these are things that we need. I think it brings up important questions. Like, if we're just trusting screenshots that somebody had edited on something that is so ridiculous, makes no sense, right? Then that's just a problem. That's a problem with people, and I don't know how that gets solved. Like, maybe it gets solved through education, because again, like, I would say, like, I'm pretty good at recognizing when things don't make sense, but I don't want to say, like, I'll never fall for something, because I might, right? I might get my fucking wallet drained tomorrow, or maybe it's already drained right now. I don't know. But I think it just comes through education, and I think more people need to understand this. And, like, I don't particularly feel like it's going to get any better. Like, I would say I have a lot of, like, normal friends who are not interested in technology at all, who barely can fucking send an email if their life depended on it, don't know how anything works to any meaningful degree, and they're young. I mean, I even know some, like, younger kids who are just like family. Like, I would think, like, that generation would grow up, like, knowing a lot about technology because they're born into it, but they just don't. Like, they don't know anything. And so, I mean, like, the next generation is just going to be scammed just as much as this generation. And I don't think we can then say, oh, well, it's because of a technology gap or whatever, because that's gone at this point. So I don't know. I just, like, it's just, I guess it comes down to, like, we need to, like, the people that are actually designing these websites, these protocols, these things that we rely on, there needs to be better stops in place to where we can figure these things out. Now, I don't know what that is, because again, like, if you can just post a picture of something and then convince everybody that's true, I don't know what these protocols can put in place to make it like
Community notes is something, but that post we just showed doesn't have a community note on it. It's been days. nobody cares enough, I guess, to do it. But I think that, that's one thing that could be put into place. It's like self-policing in that regard. People are like able to post, but there's also community notes that are actually false. So it's like doing the same thing. It's like spreading misinformation. And I think that the spread of misinformation is going to just rapidly increase as we become more leaning toward citizen type journalism and journalism on X, getting our news on X. So I think that people will kind of like, as a result of it, just get smarter over time. It's like kind of evolve. Like, I guess the Darwinism of the scenario is people who don't will end up getting confused and screwed over maybe in some way. So it's always good to, I think, double check, like, is this actually true? Not believe everything we see on the internet blindly, even if it looks legit, because with AI nowadays, a lot of things can look legit that aren't. With just inspect element, I mean, you can change any page to show what you want it to
Well,
say text wise.
it's hilarious too, because like somebody who I would say is very technical, very intelligent would be Did, right? Did is super smart. He's very technical. I mean, he knows so much more than I do. Did and I literally together were hacking away at MEE6, like trying to do injection prompts to get it to do the parroting, right? Like from earlier. We figured it out. Did knows that it works. He's the one who fucking wrote the final injection prompts that worked, right? So he knows that it's parroting. I then do a parrot in our chat to where it acts like MEE6 sent a message from the actual team saying, hey, we see what you're doing. We don't appreciate it. It's illegal. We're going to notify the authorities and, cease and desist, right? So I get the MEE6 to parrot that back in our chat. Did believes it. He's like, oh my God, you should mint this. Like, this is epic. And like believes it for like a couple minutes. Even him, I mean, he got tricked by the exact same thing that we just figured out how to trick people with. And so, like, I don't think this problem's ever going to be fixed. I think humans are just like, I don't know, humans are just we're just trustworthy creatures. I think we're like pack animals. We thrive when when we're together. We thrive when we're feeding off each other, Like every single thing that has happened in history up to this point has been, the result of an action by somebody else in the past, right? Every single thing. And that's just how we live and how we thrive and how we continue to innovate and get better. And so, we have this, I think, blind trust. And I don't know if that's ever going to be fixed. And so, like, I think regardless if we create the most secure, the most secure systems and something that hackers can never get into, social attacks will still proliferate like wildfire, because it's just easier to convince somebody to open the front door for you than it is to kick the front door down. Maybe once in a while somebody will figure out, hey, if we kick the door right here, the door will open without having to kick it really hard. But in the main, they're just going to knock on the door. Somebody's going to answer and they're going to say, hey, can I come in? This person's going to say, yeah, come on in.
Interesting. I think there's so much to dig into on like the potentials of how cool you can make some performance art based off of all of the tools we have now. And yeah, pushing things around and like trying to, be a super like shadowy super coder, that works. But it's also about like just kind of looking at, like you're saying, like just walking in the front door. And that's what these people are doing. Like Pop Punk, for example, just like making a post, or like, all these endless examples, like Shloms, like just posting a screenshot. And people like to share stuff. People like to talk about stuff. So it is interesting. I want to switch gears a little bit though and ask you, what do you think? Let's talk about on-chain summer. I know you have some takes there. So I want to talk to you about like, what do you think about on-chain summer?
So on-chain summer in the context of what? Like bases,
Base.
bases copyrighted and patented on-chain summer?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there are corporations corporation be doing corporation things. I mean, like I don't blame them. I mean, they're gonna do what they can to like be relevant, and it's a little weird. It feels almost sometimes like Base is like that meme of that guy with the skateboard at the high school, the older guy. He's like, "What's up, cool kids?" It feels a little bit like that, especially too when you watch podcasts with what is it, Brian Armstrong, right? Is that their CEO? Brian Armstrong, and
Yeah.
he's like sitting in this like beautiful office. His office chair is probably like fucking $5,000 just for the office chair, and then like all the hardwood like cabinet, behind him, and he's wearing like a suit, like a really nice tailored suit, right? Suit's probably like 5-10 grand alone just for that, and then you see the product, base, and they're based, and they got all these memes, and they're like supporting memes, and it's just funny. It's just, I don't know. It's just so weird. But I also understand too, like I think Coinbase is doing probably a lot for the sector as a whole when it comes to like political lobbying and stuff like that. So I know like I'm not stupid. Like I understand Brian Armstrong has to be able to play in the arena of formalities when it comes to like political and stuff like that. Like I totally get that. But it's just kind of funny and weird that when you look at the product and then you look at like kind of them, sometimes it's like it's a little weird. But when it comes to
Yeah.
on-chain summer, I mean, I like art and I like people making art and spreading art, and if Base is like a way for people to like do that, then cool, like more power to them. And like I know some artists that do stuff there, and that's cool if they're happy with that. Me, I'm not like I'm not really interested in creating stuff there, at least right now. But I do collect stuff there. Like the fees are definitely a lot cheaper than ETH. I mean, we've all been there. Like when we paid $100 for a freaking mint transaction on ETH, like it
Yeah.
sucks. Like it's not good, right?
And sometimes you lose the money too if it doesn't go through. That's the
Yeah.
whole other part.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. But then also on the flip side, like it seems like Base is really like ramping up like hard for like it's almost like they're expecting this like tidal wave of users to come in soon. And like I don't know, all the signs are there, like just the way that the little chatter that they're doing on Twitter. But I just don't see like that happening right now. Like I don't know. But I also haven't been around long enough to like really see, like kind of the wave one versus wave two, et cetera, like that we've seen over the last maybe decade. Um, but I don't know. I
What
don't know
about like,
if Base is
or I didn't
solving
mean to cut you
anything
off.
other than cheap fees.
Well, you can mint really cheap. I've tried minting on Base. I've done that a few times now. I think it's fantastic. I think that also like the way that you can share stuff very quickly and easily with people. You can text a coin to them. You can text a actual transaction to people. Like people can somehow like buy via text. I don't know exactly how it works, but like you could send money to people via text. I think they're solving a lot of problems there. Like for merchant processing, they can allow merchant processing via USDC for really cheap. That's really cool. And maybe even too, like you could do some sort of performance art with like being actually on chain with Base. So like on dash chain, on chain without the dash at the same time. Because I know like Did was talking about how his tool, Efficax, can also make an on-chain piece on Base. So I don't know, maybe that's something worth exploring. But overall, like I think it's funny how like a lot of people do feel the forced nature of Base being like it's on chain. This summer everything's on chain. On chain is based. Like the future is based. And like that does kind of feel like the meme it reminds me of like the Pepsi and the I don't know if you remember they were like wag me brand friend and
Yeah.
like that was just such an interesting interaction to witness. So
Like
like,
multi-billion-dollar companies, or maybe even trillion. I don't know,
but
but
like they're doing good stuff in space, and I was just curious on your take because like, it's interesting how like the on dash chain concept of actually being on chain on Ethereum was the only way of explaining being on chain, and then boom, like out of nowhere, like these people come in and they're like, no, it's on chain, like no dash. And it means that you're like interacting on base. And it kind of took away a lot of the steam that the on chain community of people putting on dash chain artworks and different things like really like had at the time. And I think it still did take away a lot from that because it's hard. Like imagine McDonald's was existing for like the longest time. And then somebody said, Mick Dash Donald's. No, that's the new way. And then all of a sudden it's like people kind of are like confused or like pulled apart in a sense there. So, I guess at the sacrifice of on-chain art, like legitimately on-chain, like stored on Ethereum, at the sacrifice of that as like a brand understanding, there is these other positive aspects. But I know you've made a lot of on-chain art, and that's why I wanted to ask you about that. So as far as like where you're going now and like where the space is currently at, I want to ask you, what do you think about like the current state of the market for artists and you as an artist? I know you've had a lot of success recently with your work. Where is your head at as far as the space, and how do you think artists should be operating in the current market environment?
Yeah, I think it's hard right now, honestly. I mean, I think it's like you're seeing a lot of like prices depressed, right? And I know it's not all about prices, but I think price is obviously like a great indicator of sentiment. Um, and so a lot of prices are suppressed right now when it comes to art, like art NFTs and stuff like that. I think we're seeing a lot of just the same old, just getting pumped out, which is kind of getting boring and stale. Um, but I also think that it's like, I do believe though that, there is a really like bright future for NFTs and really art specifically. I also do believe there's a good use case for NFTs in general for a lot of different things as well that isn't art related. So I think the future is really bright for NFTs. It's just a question of like, can you survive long enough to see that day? Like it's like that meme. We're like talking in memes over here, but it's like that meme where the guy's like with a pickaxe. He's with the pickaxe and like he gives up, and right behind like the next like wall is like a bunch of
Yeah.
diamonds. I think it's like that. Like the question is like, can you just survive long enough and stay interested enough and just keep like showing up to like kind of reap the rewards? And like as an artist, I think that's true too. Like right now it does suck. Like it's hard to sell stuff. It's hard to get people interested at all. Like, and the ways that we go about it suck too. Like, we keep talking about the metaverse and oh how cool it is, in reality the metaverse is nothing more than just fucking Twitter. Like that is crypto at this point. Like it's Twitter,
Yeah.
and Twitter's like the main town, right? And then you have all these like little sub towns or like little like guilds and stuff like that that would be like Telegram, Discord, etc. Like, but you probably found it through Twitter. Or if you found it from a friend, they probably found it through Twitter. So it all like starts with Twitter or X. And that experience sucks already because like, we are like these like incredibly complicated creatures, and we have all of these senses. Um, like vision being one of the big ones, right? Like, but if you didn't have your vision in the real world, like you could still live a pretty meaningful life. I mean, it would probably be considerably different, but you could still, live. But when it comes to like online, like if you lose your vision, you're gonna lose a lot. I mean, obviously they have like screen readers and stuff like that, but you're gonna lose a lot. And so like what I'm trying to say is like we scroll on Twitter, and in the art sense, like when we look at art on Twitter, well, the art is like heavily like compressed and degraded. That way Twitter can store hundreds of millions of photos without paying an arm and a leg for it. It's on this tiny little screen because like the actual viewing space of Twitter is tiny in relation to like your actual screen itself. You're somewhat restricted by the amount of words you can put. Not so much in the sense of like character restriction, but more in the sense of like what you can put there and how you can present it. And then also like people generally on Twitter are not sitting there reading like these long things. Like they're scrolling real quick, they're consuming fast. There's no three-dimensional, there's no three dimensions to it or anything like that. So in reality, like we're all just like sitting in front of these like two-dimensional screens. We're looking at these tiny little bits of information, and they're all sporadic and they're all different. And that's how we're like enjoying art. And it sucks. It's like a shitty way to enjoy art. And so like if you don't have something that's like super interesting right away, then the algorithm is probably going to drive you into the grounds, and no one's going to even know it exists. And then B, even if the algorithm does serve it, if it doesn't like intrigue the human brain or pass the human brain's algorithm, then like, okay, you're fucked too. And so it's just creating this hard environment right now to where it's like, how do you get any attention? How do you get people to even look at your stuff at all? Because you could have like this really cool concept, but if nobody gets it or nobody sees it, or they don't take the time to look at it at all, then it's just meaningless at that point. And I wish we had a better way for it. And so, and I think things like On Cyber, like what On Cyber are doing, I think that goes towards it. But then you could have the argument that like nobody goes into these virtual worlds in the first place, and that might be true. I mean, like how many virtual worlds do you visit on like a monthly basis? Like,
Yeah, I mean, Decentraland was a thing for a while, and then like people found out they only had like 12 users or whatever. And then like, Facebook invested like their entire like billions of dollars or whatever. I don't know, don't quote me on that number, but they invested tons of money into the metaverse, and people just weren't into it. And I think in reality, they might just be overcomplicating what we've already got here. Like, I think of this as the metaverse. Like, the fact that we're able to have a conversation over our computer is the metaverse. Like, social media is the metaverse. Like, people looking at art in online galleries is the metaverse. Like, to me, that is like the extent of it to which feels comfortable and normal, in the sense of like, I want to actually use those things. But then like going into Nifty Island, for example, like I took a look at that, and I think it's really cool what they built, but I don't really feel like the urge to be spending a ton of time there. And maybe I'm just not seeing that vision right now. But like, there's a lot of people in the past who've had amazing products and ideas, but just were too early. And therefore they didn't actually get the success that they deserved, in a sense, or the success they were after, because they were so early. So it's like you could be right and early and then still be wrong. And that might be the case there with metaverse. I don't know, like people use Minecraft, like kids are natively on Minecraft like crazy or whatever. I've never really been a part of that, but I would say that like if there was a metaverse to exist, we might just already be in it, you know?
yeah, yeah. And I hope it gets better. I mean, like I grew up playing video games like World of Warcraft and RuneScape and stuff like that, and I
Yeah,
played
yeah.
played a lot, like thousands of hours of these games, and so I can appreciate like these virtual worlds. And I know it's like so cliche and stupid, and especially because I'm like an adult, so it's like to think that I'm like sitting in front of my computer, like running around a fucking virtual world, talking to people is just sounds fucking stupid, but
Like
but
Club Penguin. I just picture like Club Penguin.
yeah, but like, is it really any different than like sitting on Twitter and like listening to some opinion of some guy that has a cat PFP, which is exactly me right now, with
Yeah, right.
talking as a cat. So it's like it's equally stupid, right? Um, but I like have the urge for us hopefully to get there, because I think the concept of the metaverse is a good concept. I just think the execution of it just hasn't had enough time to be executed and really be done right. Um, and I don't know what that future looks like if the concept of the metaverse was actually like put in place in some meaningful way. I don't know like what that would look like, but to answer your original question, like it's hard right now for artists because there's just so much noise and there's so little creativity in ways that you can present it, that it's very hard to get anyone's attention to actually look at what you've created. And so, where I've been lucky lately is that my stuff that I've been creating has been fairly new in concept in terms of like what we see normally in the NFT space. And so I've had it easy because I'm like, hey, look, this fucking NFT will crash all your shit. and they're like, whoa, like I've never seen that before. I didn't even know that was possible. And so like it of course gets a lot of interest versus like if I create any of my visual art gets very little interest at all, which I don't know if that's a comment towards I just suck making visual art. I don't know, maybe. But my like less visual, more conceptual, more thought-provoking stuff does better. And generally because my thought-provoking stuff is more risque in nature. And so, you know, it's just interesting and people are like, oh, I didn't even know that you could do that. Like, let me look at it more. But if you're
Yeah.
just like a normal visual NFT artist, it's really fucking hard right now because there's a lot of people making visual art. You're screaming into a void essentially. And like, you know, what makes you any different or any more special than like the next visual artist? And so I guess those are good questions to ask yourself, you know, is like, how do I even get any attention? Because I don't particularly believe, and this kind of sucks to say, but I don't particularly believe that the level of attention or sales that you get are dependent upon how good of an artist you are. I don't think that's the case. And I think we've seen that time and time again in the NFT space. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it has everything to do with like, how do you get people to notice you and be interested in you? Like, is it like your kind of artist persona that's interesting and mysterious? Is it that your artwork is, you know, kind of mysterious and weird, but maybe the actual technical execution of it isn't all that like impressive? Um, you know, what is it? Like, is it the controversy that's around your artwork? Like, for instance, Petra with the babes or whatever. I mean, like, and I thought that art is really cool, but it was made on AI and it probably is not that hard to recreate. So like the technical feasibility of it is not hard. But what made it even more interesting is all the hate that she received from it. And then a lot of other people started supporting her because of the hate. So it was less about like the technical art, more about people are like, it's the story around it that was interesting. Um, you know, and same for like the Mona Lisa, for instance. Like, I don't think the Mona Lisa is like the most impressive technical art there ever was. I think the Mona Lisa wasn't even fairly popular for a very long time. I think once it had gotten stolen, um, that's when it started becoming popular. Like it was the story of it. And so like, I don't know, if you look at the Mona Lisa and you're like, wow, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, I think you're fucking crazy. Like, it's not. It's clearly not. Um, but
Really
it's
good
like,
points.
and now it's become, you know, why is the Mona Lisa popular? The Mona Lisa is popular because the Mona Lisa is fucking popular. It's like Kim Kardashian. Like, why is Kim Kardashian famous? Like, she's famous because she's famous. Like, like nobody remembers, like, you know, no one remembers why she's famous anymore. She just is. And so I think it becomes that's just how it is in NFTs. And now, like, you know, I've even started to get a persona like myself, like as being this like person that likes to break things. And like I'll be in discords and people are like, oh no, don't break my shit. And I'm like, I'm like, bro, I'm not here to break your thing. I'm like, I'm here to like use your product. Like I think it's really cool and like I'm interested. Like I'm not actively
But that's
looking to
sick.
break stuff all the time. Yeah, and that is cool, but it's almost like the persona that you start to build or that people build for you, it starts to like self build itself. It's like a
It
flywheel.
does. It
Um, and then
does.
and then you have to decide, I guess, as an artist, like if you want to accept that and continue to build it more or not and like pivot away from it. And so yeah,
Well,
I don't
let
know.
me ask you something. So, what kind of art do you enjoy making more? Is it the conceptual, breaking shit performance art, or is it the visual, dope? Like, because you've had success with 3D art as well. You've sold out a collection. You've made sales of multiple ETH for one of one type work. Like, you've made sick, and I love your art too. Like, I have a lot of it in my wallet, and I proudly display it. And I'm curious though, like, which do you enjoy making more? And I have a follow-up question for you after that too.
Yeah, I'd say right now I'm most interested in the security stuff. Like I was actually talking with my wife about this the other day. Like, and it's kind of funny and like, you know, youth is wasted on the young. Like when I was younger, I was already like playing around with penetration testing. Like, I mean, I had sent like penetration reports to big companies without them even asking me for it. Like they're like, "Who the fuck are you?" I'm like, "Don't
You're
worry
like, I'm
about
a
it. Just
cat on the internet,
I'm
man.
like,
Here.
just here, just fix this if you want." Um, but I never went to school for it. Like I literally went to school and all through high school I'm like fucking around, like stealing packets on the network and stuff, like just doing stuff I shouldn't be doing just to like learn. And I never did anything malicious. Like I never tried to like fucking log in or change my grades or anything, but I just wanted to see like can I even get to the point where maybe that's even a possibility. Um and when I went to college, I probably should have gone for like cybersecurity or computer science or anything like that. Um, but I think what turned me off is that I suck at math. Like I'm just fucking horrible at math. And so if you're going to be a computer scientist, like your courses are just fucking math. And so
But
I,
why? I mean, that might be a
I
stupid question.
well, maybe computer science wasn't for me, like because of the math, but maybe I should have done something a little bit more specific to cybersecurity. Like, okay, instead of me building, architecture and stuff like that, maybe I, try to break other people's shit. And that would have been less math for sure. And I should have done that, but me being young at the time, my head is somewhere else, probably about making money. And so I'm like, well, what can I do that would make me more money? And I went after that, even though it wasn't really something that I was passionate about. And then fast forward to now, I'm not involved professionally at all with anything cybersecurity. Like, if you guys knew what I do for a living, it's completely starkly different than cybersecurity. It's the complete opposite. Um, when I was telling my wife the other day, I was like, it would be kind of funny to go back to school for cybersecurity related something. Um, but maybe I can actually like fulfill that urge and that learning and stuff through my artwork instead. And so that can be my avenue for cybersecurity is
Totally,
just for
totally.
my artwork. And so, I think that's what I'm going to do is like, I think I'm going to continue to go down the thread of what I've been doing lately is just anything related to security, cybersecurity, and even regular security. I mean, like, again, going back to physical security, like break down a fucking door. Like maybe one day I create art that involves physical security as well. I'm not sure. So we'll see.
So, like, the reason I asked that is because, if you enjoy making 3D art more than doing the, cybersecurity, like pushing the boundaries type art, but you're doing the other one instead of the 3D, and in reality, you're only doing it because you think that it's going to create more success. At the end of the day, you're not really winning as the creator. Like, so my point is like, because you enjoy doing the cybersecurity and pushing bounds, like type of performance art right now, that's where I think leaning in is key. Because it's like, it doesn't matter if like your 3D art is easier to sell than the art that potentially is more conceptual and more difficult to create and takes more time. Like, I think that for people listening, like in the creator side of things, that it's important to just do the things that you really enjoy doing, and then enough time will pass that people will love you for that thing. Because you can try to make something that's not really you in your heart, and you won't really enjoy it on a long enough time span, like a long enough timeline. But like, if you just really love doing and pushing these boundaries, over time you're going to get known for that. You already have. And look at the success that you've seen in a rough market, being able to sell out artworks, making thousands of dollars per concept. I mean, man, like I saw that you were doing that and I was inspired, and I was like, damn, like this is amazing. Like so I just wanted to ask that question because it's like, I think that what we enjoy as artists and creators is what we need to do. And it doesn't matter anything else, because over a long enough time span, people will start loving you for that, and you'll create your audience for that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to add on to that too, like, again, going back to my very early in this conversation, I said that like, everything can be a tool in your tool belt, you know, in my case, like 3D is obviously a tool that I have. But I can still apply that to
For
cybersecurity. Like,
sure, man.
for instance, I'm working on ideating a project right now where like I basically decompile like a malware and then turn it into some sort of visual piece to where, the underlying concept is that like this visual piece that you're looking at is an actual it's made from actually something that is malicious, to where if you reversed it again, it could maybe drain your ETH or something like that, right? And so it's like this kind of safe way to view something that otherwise would be dangerous. But for instance, like maybe instead of it being like a 2D painting or something that's created from the code, maybe it's like a 3D sculpture, right? Like, there's ways in Blender to where you can create like shapes and stuff like that with code and input. And so, maybe it's something like that. And so I think, as an artist, anything that you can learn, really anything, right? Anything that you can learn, maybe one day you'll be thinking about making art or whatever, and you'll be like, oh shit, like I can actually take like that over there that I like wasted fucking hours learning, and I can apply that to this project and make something really cool and unique that maybe people haven't seen before. And so that's what I'm
Yeah.
constantly doing too. Like I have this kind of bad habit to where like when I work on art, I always have the expectation that I'm gonna like finish something. I don't like to ever leave anything like unfinished, and it sucks because what ends up happening is I end up sitting for hours working on something, and it ends up never working out, and so I feel like I have wasted my time. I feel like I'm, I guess a failure, quote unquote, for that very specific moment, and I'm all discouraged. And then what ends up happening is I, forget about it. Obviously, I go about my life, and weeks or months later, I stumble onto something. I'm like, wait a second, I remember I was wasting all that fucking time the other day. I can actually use that like stuff I learned, by wasting that time, quote unquote, to do this now. And then I do something and it's really cool and I like it. So it wasn't a waste of time, right? It was just learning. But I have this bad habit to where like I don't classify it as learning in my brain. I classify it as like wasting my time, which I hate wasting time. So it's just a bad habit. But
I feel you. I feel you. Well, I didn't want to cut you off there. What were you saying on
no,
that
I was
last
just
bit?
I was just saying that, like learning new stuff, even if it feels at the very moment that it's like a waste of time. I mean, nothing is learning anything. It's never a waste of time. Like it always expands it just
Your
expands everything.
repertoire.
Yeah, it expands
Like,
everything.
I think that something I've taken into practice, I heard this from Dan Jews, who was on the third episode of In It 5 the Art, someone I really respect for the way he looks at this game. He didn't say this in our pod, but it was a different podcast that I listened to with him in it. He said that he likes to get his artwork to like 75% upwards to 100% and find a space in between there to stop. Like you never want to go beyond 100%. And that gave me a really good like understanding of like where I actually have that same problem of like I'll make a piece and then I'm like looking at it for too long. So then I'm lost in it and I'm like, okay, I need to add this. And then I overdo it. I add too many effects. I worry about too many little details that most people would never even notice, like, or tiny line adjustments, or like, since I do all like hand drawn art, like in my aspect, I'll be sitting there like changing a line for like 30 minutes that nobody's even going to notice. So like, for me, that's helped me a lot. So I don't know if that impacts you in any way, or anyone listening, if that impacts you. But for me, that made a big difference, because now when I'm working, I'm like, all right, I just want to get to 75%. And then once I'm there, I'm like, all right, I feel this is like 75% done. Now I'm looking to exit before I get to 100%. So I don't have to worry about like being complete. So it gives me a bit of a relief when it comes to that. So I don't
Yeah,
know. What do you think about that?
that's a good way to think about it. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't like to I've noticed too that like at least for me, if I almost feel like I don't know, without sounding like all like like astral and
No,
spiritual,
go
but
for it.
I almost feel like the artwork kind of tells you when it wants to be made. And what I mean by that is like I'm not very good at like being like a commissioned designer, or I do some like side work here and there for projects that I like and people that I like, just to help them out and to make some extra money. It's nice. But
Mhm.
I'm not good with like deadlines. Like people tell me like, oh, this needs to be done by this date. I'm usually like way fucking behind it. And my mentality is like, look, if they want to work with me, like it's going to be in my timeline. But because I'm not like, super in need of it. But it what I've noticed is that when I don't feel like working on something, and in retrospect, this will sound so fucking obvious, but when I don't feel like working on something, like forcing it, it just never turns out good. Like it's usually better if like the longer it goes on, and I don't force myself to like just get it done, and I just wait until it just happens, until it feels right, and then it always seems to kind of be better than what I kind of expected if I do it like that. Um, and so, like I said, in retrospect, this all sounds so obvious, but not forcing it tends to yield a much better result in the end. And then you look back and you're like, wow, okay, like maybe you have different versions of it, and you're like, wow, okay, this last version just looks so much better than the first one. Um,
I
which
completely agree with you.
is a problem because, again, like I said earlier, I like to get stuff done fast. Like I like to ship fast, because I don't know, my brain's just like that. But it doesn't always work in my favor, because then sometimes too I'll release a piece or whatever I'm doing, I'll release something and then I'll look back and be like, fuck, why didn't I do this? Like that would have been cool.
Yeah, always. I mean, like that's part of it though. It's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. So it's like if we accept that and embrace that more than we like go against it and try to make everything as perfect as possible or like think of every little thing, then it puts us in a better mental space, I believe, to actually create from our heart in the most accurate, most truest, most genuine way. So like I completely agree. Like I hate deadlines. And dude, I even hate meetings. Like I hate times. Like it's like, hey, do this at this time. And like that's why when I'm doing this podcast, obviously we're setting times for people to come on and to have a conversation and vibe. That to me is like I can only do like one meeting a day or like at most maybe two. Like I don't know how people live their life based on like this time at this time this time this. Like it's just not my thing. And the more artists that I talk to and creators and creatives, like I realize that a lot of people are actually like that. They don't like in a perfect world, they don't need to rely on time. Like I'd rather just like, okay, when I'm feeling the art, like I can't just be like, all right, today from 9 to 5, I'm gonna sit down and make art. It just never has worked for me. Because then I end up sitting down and I'm like, I don't really feel like doing this right now. And then I find if I go and do something else, and then I'm like, I do feel like making art. Boom. I'll just open up my iPad, open up my computer, get into it. And before I know, time has passed and I've created an artwork almost not even conscious. Like I am conscious doing it, but it's like it's almost creating itself through you more than it's like you actually being like, all right, now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do that. So I don't know if you resonate with that, but like, it sounds like you do. So
Yeah,
yeah, I just think it's kind of a
absolutely.
weird concept, right? It's counterintuitive. It's like we want to achieve something, then stop trying to and let it happen,
Yeah,
and then it will.
yeah,
Like just have the end result in mind, and then like let the craziness happen and let everything fall into place and let all the water kind of. I think of it as like water raindrops. Like you can't like know where every drop's going to hit, but then it just like on a slope will go down into the spot that it needs to
yeah.
go, and it'll just fall into place.
Yeah, it's definitely different for everybody too. I mean, I know, for instance, like Cause, obviously famous, what would
Yeah.
you say, street artist, sculptural artist, all sorts of things. Um, I read in an interview that he has to like set devoted work time, but and his rationale for it is like he has a family, his kids and a wife, and obviously when you have all of that, it's very hard to do stuff sporadically because it just doesn't work anymore. Obviously, like when you have wife and kids and you have other stuff going on, like they call for certain things and you have to be there to be able to do it. And so having like a dedicated kind of quiet time, I guess you could say, to work on certain things is useful in that context. And that's sort of what I'm facing right now. Like, a couple of years ago, I used to be able to just fucking do whatever I want, sit down and work all night if I wanted to. But nowadays, I can't do that anymore. Like I have people that rely on me for certain things, and so I'm
Of
I'm still
course.
trying to figure that out. Like how can I create time to be creative without, like you say though, like forcing it. And that's been tough for me lately, just with
Well,
everything that I've got going on.
the interesting thing about that is like the brain apparently takes like 30 to 45 minutes to get into flow. So like if you do need to schedule your flow and be like, okay, I want to create art. I only have this much time today to do that. Understand usually the first 30 to 45 minutes will just be like kind of shit. Not always. Could jump right in on any given day potentially, but like going into it, knowing that the first 30 to 45 is like you getting into the swing of it, you condition your brain to know that that's going to be like that. And then after that, you're kind of like just in the zone. So it takes a little while to get in the zone. I guess you can schedule it, but of course, like in a perfect world, it's nicer to be free flowing and stuff. But as we grow older and as we gain more responsibilities and build a family, I don't think anyone listening or you should feel like, like I wish that I had more time to just do whatever the fuck in any moment. Because, as life grows, there's so many benefits to having family grow and like having, more responsibilities and doing more stuff. And yeah, we don't get to just, be like, all right, like la di da, like go about our day. I feel like making art. Let's do it. Like there's benefits, I guess, to both sides. So it's an interesting game of life, right? Like it's odd, actually.
Yeah. Well, there has to be a means to the end, right? Like, I mean, the end of the day, like, why do I like to create art? I mean, it's really, I want like my children one day to look back and be like, wow, like my dad was like super cool. Like, look at all this like cool stuff that he did. And, he really like, he was brave enough to like, push himself out of his own comfort zone. He's not an artist. He's not a traditional artist. He had no education in art, but look, he is like respected by, other people who do have all of that. So, obviously there's something interesting there. And, I want to give my kids just the ability to think that they can really do anything. And again, it's a cliche, right? But I do believe that we live in a time now where you really can do anything that you want. It just comes back to what I was saying earlier, like time and persistence. Like if you are persistent enough to learn something and be somebody new and you put enough time to it, then it's probably going to happen. I mean, it's like and that's so special. And so, I wish I was more willing to tell people more stuff about me, because I think my personality would show that I'm like one of those people who I'm like, you can do whatever you want and you can change that any moment in your life, because that's what I'm always doing and always taking risks. And I want my kids to see that. So that's really the means to the end with that is like, I want, and that's what's cool about being on chain, right? Is that, it can survive for a long time. I want it to be long enough to where when my children are old enough to understand it, they can look back and maybe I'm gone by then and they can be like, wow, okay, like, this is super cool. And again, maybe one day, like maybe, and I don't want to wish this, but maybe I die before like my kids are old enough to even understand me properly, right? But if I leave behind something that they can look back and just get like just a little bit of me, that's really cool too. So that's what I like about creating, is that it like creates that possibility, versus if you don't create anything in your life and you just like a normal person that goes about their day every day, working, coming home, working, etc. I mean, what are you really leaving behind? Like, you're not leaving much behind at that point. Like, you're leaving behind thoughts and stuff like that, and people that knew you, but eventually those people will be gone too. And so, by creating stuff, something that can last longer than you, it kind of gives you a little bit of immortality in a sense. It's cool, like you go to museums and you see all these artworks by these artists who are long gone. It's cool because like they're still kind of here, and some of them are even much more relevant now than they were back when they were even alive. And that's cool. And like, who
Yeah.
knows, maybe one day like we'll be long gone and like our artwork will be sitting in a museum being like scrutinized by all these people,
Yeah,
and
maybe Snow
maybe not.
Crash will be crashing like the Guggenheim one day or some
They'll be
shit.
like, this damn crypto Bushi.
They'll be like cursing the skies, like, you son of a bitch. Totally agree with you though. Like, it does give purpose to our soul to feel like we're creating something that gives a lasting impression or like leaves that room for immortality. And I think when looking at our art with like a zoomed out perspective like that, it actually makes a really big difference, because it can be easy to be zoomed in this current market, like trying to make that day's bread basically, or that week's bread, like for many artists out there who still consistently stick with the game. But I think the more that we zoom out and realize like, okay, why am I actually doing this? It gives us more clarity on like what we really want to work on. And like the more we think about what do I actually enjoy making, then it doesn't make it feel like a chore that you're doing it anymore. It's not like you're in it because you're trying to make money. Like maybe you are, and that's, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But like that can taint your like viewpoint of actually what you're creating. And I think it's important if we just remember like, why are we actually doing any of this? Like money comes and goes. It's, I think of it like oxygen, you know, like it's not about money as much as it is like, yes, you want to create money and it feels great to make money, but also we have to think bigger than that in order to make the money in higher quantities. Like, and stop focusing on that, and then we start focusing on like, how do we make this lasting impression, and how do we have this idea that actually lasts like way beyond us, and then the money actually comes in even greater quantities, I think. So I'm a big believer in that. Like, just first of all, like what I've learned over these years, and actually like I think you would agree as well, is just like do the thing that you really enjoy. And then like also like think about why you're doing it and try to remind yourself of that and have that like top of mind. So if we do things we enjoy and we're doing it because of a reason that actually means a lot to us, then it kind of just falls into place. And over a long enough timeline, maybe day one, nobody cares. You get 0 likes. Day 2, you get 0 likes. Day 30, you get 0 likes. Day 69, one person finally notices your work. Day 365, maybe you get your first sale. Like, it doesn't have to work that way, but I think like if we stop focusing on the immediate gratification and instead focus on like just creating until we can't be ignored, and on a long enough timeline, being consistent and being genuine and making connections and being a reply guy on Twitter and making friends and building stuff every single day. And, you know, like we spoke not too long ago, I was like, sometimes, you know, it feels like you're just making art for the sake of it. And you can kind of get lost in that. And I was talking about like my own experience, and you were like, well, no, like no matter what, you're making art, you're contributing to your style as an artist. And that, I think about that a lot, man. So like, even if you just make a piece that nobody buys, as long as it's still in line with your heart, then you're contributing to that style as an artist for yourself, and the provenance as well if you mint it. So overall, like I get super passionate when talking about like just doing what you love. I think it's the most important thing in the world, because you know, like you can make all the money in the world and be miserable, and then you can also be very happy and have enough money to do the things you want to do, or have an abundance of money and be very happy because you're working every day on the thing that fires you up. So
Yeah,
yeah, I guess that's my
I
TED
agree.
talk.
I agree. Yeah, the only thing I would add on to that, I think one of the most important things in Web3, if you're like a new artist, or maybe you're like still relatively unknown, um, the most important thing you can do is find like a tribe of people. And I know like you could say like, oh, well, all of crypto Twitter is a tribe, right? And they are, but I say find a more micro tribe within that that ecosystem. Um, because like I was saying very early in this conversation, like, you know, we are pack animals, and we rely on each other. And, you know, like I said earlier, the actions of other people's actions are now the current day. So really you need to find like a group of people that you can kind of commingle with, and similar minded people, maybe similar style artists, or people that are interested in the same things that you are. And that's the best way to grow, is to grow within a community. And then it's like a rising tide lifts all ships. So like, you know, if you're like friends with some other artists, and they're doing cool stuff, then, you know, they're going to inspire you to do cool stuff. And then if they start getting popular, you know, you're probably going to get pulled up with them in a sense. And so, you know, it's way better than just going it alone, which is just very hard.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's a great place to kind of like leave things off. This has been an epic conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you, man, and getting to dive in on your takes on where we're at in the space and performance art, and talk about like your work and where you're at and where you're going. And I think that you definitely, you keep heading down this path, especially you're gonna come up with these sick concepts that are gonna even top the past concepts that you've come up with. Like you're going to come up with an even better version of something like Snow Crash, or something completely different, but like just more shocking, more insane, and like just keep following that if that's what your heart's into. Like I think that you really have a special niche there, and it's obviously made a very big impact on the space. Like people have talked a lot about it, so it's like keep doing you, man. And I have loved seeing the evolution of Crypto Bushi over the years. It's been really cool. So I appreciate you coming on, and it's been an epic conversation, man. So thanks.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you bringing me on, and sounds like you have a cool, sick lineup of future guests. So I'm excited to hear some other people.
Hell yeah. Well, awesome, man. Let's wrap this one up then. We'll definitely continue this conversation, I'm sure, outside of here. But this has been amazing. Thanks for coming on. You're definitely in it five the art for sure. You're in it five the performance, and you're in it five the community. And I got a lot of respect for you, man. So keep crushing, and keep being an inspiration for people too, dude. I think you're doing some awesome shit. So keep on keeping on, brother.
Thanks, brother.
All right, man. I'm gonna end it then. Peace, homie. And thanks again.
Peace.